All right, sorry that took a little bit, but I'd like everybody, we're going to try doing something together as a class, and let's see how it works. How's that? So I'd like everyone to go and on your desktop or wherever you typically create things, I'd like you to create a new folder, and we're going to call it Mongo REST API. I put it all in lowercase and just ran it all together. It doesn't matter if you do it that way or not, but that's fine. So Mongo REST API. All right. Then inside of there, because I just want to set my stuff up for what we're about to do. Okay? So I'm going to come in here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file, and it's going to be my server.js. And then I'm going to create some folders. The first folder I'm going to create is going to be called controllers. And the second folder that I create is going to be called models. I realize that's virtually impossible to see. But hopefully from listening to me say that, you know, that you got enough out of it. Wow, that's just really terrible as far as... That's even worse than it. There it is. It's a little better. All right. So everybody has that?
Well, I got server.js.
Okay. So you wanted server.js and you wanted two folders, one named controllers and one named models.
Okay.
And the servers.js, which is the text, right?
That server, not a text file.
No,
No,
text
server.js. It's a JavaScript file.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So let's go out to GitHub. And however you create your own new repo, I want you to create a new repo. And here's a surprise. We're going to call it Mongo REST API with, again, no, that's the best I can get it. I'm sorry. It's just not good. All right. So yours, of course, as always, will be private. Mine is going to stay public. Create repository. All right. Now, to try to make this a little bit easier, again, let's just grab this line. You can grab it either from here or from here. It doesn't matter. But the line that says git remote add origin, so copy that to the clipboard. I'm going to just keep going. And if somebody doesn't get what I'm saying, just stop me, please. All right. And then coming back here, I'm going to open up our Mongo REST API folder. I'm going to right mouse click on it and choose git bash here. We've done this many times before, so it's nothing new. So we're going to do a git init to create our git repository. You again should have the .git file there. And then I'm going to right mouse click and paste in that git remote add origin thing that we just did. All right? So we now have that. Questions? Everybody's with me, correct? All right. Clear my screen. And just because I think it makes it a little easier for you to read, that's about as big as I think I can get it. We're going to do our npm init. All right. Mongo REST API is fine. Version 1 is fine. Description, this is a simple REST API using Node.js and the MongoDB database. Something like that is fine. Okay? Entry point, hopefully you've already created the server.js. That will be our entry point. Test command, we leave blank. Git repository, it should be filled in if you copied that line in. Keywords, feel free to put them in. I'm just not going to put in any. All right, but if you want to, go ahead and do that. Author, you feel free again to put in your name. All right. License, I always like MIT because I know that's open source. It says, is that okay? I say yes. I clear, and immediately I'm going to come in and just open up my package.json to make sure it looks pretty much the way I want it to look. We have not added any packages yet. We're going to do that in a minute. All right. So, yeah, it looks okay as far as I can tell. So I'm going to close that. And then coming back into our Git Bash window, I'm going to do two things. First, and you've seen these before, npm I. For now, let's just put in Express and Mongoose. We'll talk about this in just a moment. So npm I express Mongoose. Hit enter. Mongoose is basically what Express is to Node.js, how Express makes it easier for you to write code. Mongoose is to MongoDB. All right, it's sort of, for lack of better words, kind of a helper file. All right, or a helper program, whatever you want to call it. Finally, I'm going to do my npm I minus capital D, and we're going to put in nodemon. All right. I'm going to clear the screen. And again, just because I always like to, I'm going to double check my package.json one more time. And there's my dependencies and my dev dependencies. Good. All right, that's fine. Now I'm going to open up the entire folder in Visual Studio Code. So there it is, Mongo REST API. So I'm going to open it with code. All right. Now, just because it's, again, whoops, it's good practice, I'm going to come in here and get rid of that test file. So I've got, under my scripts, I'm in my package.json, and I got rid of the test thing. And after the start, I'm going to put in my dev, where I've got nodemon server.js. Okay, questions on that? Any questions on anything we've done so far? And I'm just going to do a file save. All right. Oh, and there's, I forgot about this, so we'll do it right now. It's no biggie. What we're going to do is we're going to use a new package that we have not looked at before. So in just a moment, we're going to look at this new package, and we're going to look at Mongoose. Okay, but before we do, go back into here, because I should have had you add it before. I didn't, sorry. We're going to do an npm I minus capital D, all right? And the name of the package is .env, all right? Do you know how I have been saying stuff like when we make const port and we say equal process .env.port, etc.? That's the file that you put that stuff in. All right, so npm I minus d dot env, again, hit enter. And of course, it added some more dependencies in there. So again, I'm going to clear my screen here. Now I should be able to shrink this way down and minimize it. And I might have to close that and open it again, but under my dev dependencies, I now have 2 of them. All right. Okay.
That didn't happen to me.
Well, when you did it, did you do the npm space I space minus capital D space dot env?
.env.
It's DOTENV, not a period.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened?
Gave me npm warn optional. Error or what? That's it. Add one package.
Well,
But never.
just minimize that. Close your package.json and reopen it. Well, now you may have lost the changes. And it's probably because the package was open. So just close this. Don't even save it. Just say don't save it. It's fine. Now, run that command again from your window there. Just hit, yeah. It would never hurt anything if it wasn't there already. So now, minimize that and open up your package.json file again.
Okay,
It's in there now. Good. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a .env under my dev dependencies.
If you've got it here under your dependencies, then you didn't put the minus capital D in.
No, it should be, it's not in there anywhere. In
Okay.
that package, it's.
Okay, close your package.json file.
Alright.
Just make sure it's closed. If it says you want to save, just say no.
No, sorry.
All right. Go back to here.
Oh, there it is, okay.
You got it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No problems. All right. So, first thing, let's come in here and let's make our git ignore file. All right. So, up at the, I'm just going to do it from right here because I got a blank area in here. I'm going to close my package.json. I don't need it. I'm going to right mouse click on here. In here, I'm going to right mouse click and choose new file. And I'm going to put in there dot git ignore. If we put a dot at the beginning of it, I don't remember if we do or not. I think we do. All right, dot git ignore. All right, and we're going to put two things in there. Dot env, which is going to be our environment variables, okay, and node modules. All right. So everything that we're about to put into our environment, and it's not going to be much for now, but everything that we put in there, that could potentially hold sensitive information, passwords for a database, etc. So you want to make sure that when you send this thing out to the internet, that we don't include that stuff. Does that make sense? All right. And the node modules, because again, remember, you can always replicate that by just doing an npm install. All right. So we've got that. I'm going to do a file save. I should be able to close that git ignore. We probably won't need to open it again and do anything else with it. That's my guess, at least. All right. So let's come in and start running our server.js, or start writing the code for it. All right. So we're going to end up adding more to this in just a minute. So I'm going to actually start on line 3, and you'll know why in just a minute. All right. So I'm going to have here const express equals require express const. I think we put in Mongoose. Mongoose equals require Mongoose. Const app equals express const port equal process.env.port, or pick a number. How about 5678? I don't think I've used that one yet. I need 2 of these. Or 5678. All right. And for now, again, I'll just put in my app.listen, and we'll be listening on port. And let's use a fat arrow function here. And we'll put in console.log, play with some template literals, and say server running on port. So if all does work right now, when we run this in just a moment, it should come up and say server running on port 5678. Make sense to everybody? So let's save this and come in here and try my npm run dev. I am supposing that you went in and made that change to the package.json file that I mentioned. If you didn't, then just type in node space server.js. Either one would work.
I didn't get anything. Can you move that terminal window? Thank you.
Is everybody caught up? Everybody has that that dev inside of your package.json, correct? All right. So let's see if I do run this. Hit enter. Good. Okay, it's running. So far there's no errors. Now we could go in, take the time, and do a quick, we could come in here and we could say, app.get, and we could make something so when it comes up, we could have it give us a nice little message or whatever. We're not going to do that. Now, so you should know at least that right now, if I do come out to a browser window here, and you don't have to do this, but if I just come out and put in localhost, I forgot the number I used.
5678.
Thank you. 56 localhost :5678 cannot get / because we don't have any routes. That again should make sense to everyone. So before we go through that, let's look at a couple things here. So I'm going to go out to npm.js.com, and the first one I'm going to look at is Mongoose. You can do the same. I'm going to choose the first one. All right. And as it says there, it's an object modeling tool designed to work in an asynchronous environment. Well, guess what? When we do this later, we're going to use async await up the wazoo. You don't necessarily have to. And with what we're going to be working on, we're not going to exactly have a boatload of records in there. You with me? But at the same time, we'll just work with what we've got, and it should be fine. So, again, notice it has its own GitHub repo. It's got a mongoosejs.com page. Let's go to the mongoose.js.com page that's right there. All right? Because this really does have most everything in there that is Mongoose. All right? In fact, there's another page. I thought you got to it from here, but I didn't see it right there. So let's see. Yeah, read the docs. There we go. All right. So this really has pretty much just about anything you could think of that you'd want to do with Mongoose, including adding a new record, modifying an existing record, deleting an existing record, showing all records, showing some records, etc. So all of your major CRUD type of API functions are explained in here. The different data types, if you look, are shown in here. And you'll notice, all right, because later we're going to be using some of these. So the ones that we're going to be caring about today, all right, we'll just use a few of them. We'll use string, we'll use number, we'll use date, and we'll use Boolean. All right? Now, the object ID, I'm taking for granted you already understand what that is, because we've done this kind of thing already where we went and dropped in a bunch of JSON, and it created the records for us, and it gave each record an ID. Right? That's the object ID that they're talking about right there. All right? Strings are strings. Numbers is anything numeric, and dates, and we're going to keep that all really simple. I'm not going to be concerned right now with the other stuff that's in there. If you want to look up buffer or mixed, go ahead and do so. All right? We're just not going to do it right now. All right. Okay, so let's go back. There's a lot of really good documentation on that page that I just showed you under Read the Docs. There's also some pretty good documentation out on GitHub. Some of it's repetitive from what you saw before. All right, so I'm just going to keep that one up there in case I need it later. And I'm going to go out over here And again, I'm going to go out to npmjs.com, and this time I'm going to search for .env. And notice it says, loads environment variables from a .env file. If we get as far as I hope we get today, we are going to attempt to, from scratch, we're going to build a completely brand new API using Node, Express, MongoDB, and Mongoose. If we all get it working, then we're going to go and, of course, we're going to push it out to your GitHub repository, but we're also going to try to take it and send it out to Heroku so it is literally out on the internet. All right, so we'll go through the process that you have to go through. All right, and what I'd like you to start doing after we do that, and hopefully everybody does it successfully, is I'd like you to start taking all the projects that you do and throwing them out onto Heroku. All right, it's free, and it's basically after you set it up once, rather than doing your push and pushing it to GitHub, you push it to Heroku. There's not much more to it than that. All right, there's a little bit of work up front when you first start, but to be honest with you, not a whole heck of a lot. All right, so, again, it says it's a zero dependency module that loads environment variables. Yeah, it does. All right, this line that's right here, it says as early as possible in your application, require and configure .env. So let's grab that line, let's copy that line, see it under usage. Can everybody find that on your screens? All right, otherwise if you're not there, go out to npmjs.com, search for .env, and just scroll down, 10-15% of the way on the page. So I'm going to copy this to the clipboard. I'm going to go back into my server.js file, and I'm going to paste it in and put a semicolon at the end. Again, the more you watch, I think I've mentioned this to you before, probably 50% of the time when I watch something online, people use semicolons at the end of all lines. Probably 50% of the time they don't. And I've said this before, if you're going to use it, use semicolons, use them all the time. If you're not going to use them, never use them, unless you get some kind of an error that it's expecting it. All right? But just be consistent. All right, enough of that. So, while we're in here, let's put in another line right here. And we're going to try seeing if we can connect. So we're going to say mongoose dot connect. All right. And in here, we're going to put MongoDB ://localhost. Now, we may have to put that port number in here. I'm going to see if we can do it. I've had it work with the port number in there. I've had it work without the port number in there. So I want to see if we need it or not. All right? And then we're going to end up creating our own database, and I don't think we've got one called this, so let's call it EMPS for employees. I don't think we have one called EMPS. It might not be a bad idea if you're not already doing so, and probably you haven't, to open up a command window, come in here and just type in your Mongo sh to start the Mongo shell up. So Mongo sh, we did this the other day, just so that's up and running. So now I can say show DBs, just to make sure I don't have one that's called EMPS. Can everybody see that? You can do the same thing on yours. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but I'm going to call it EMPS. So if you call it something else, then you're going to have to change wherever I might use it. Make sense? All right, so let me do a CLS here. And I'm going to leave this up and running, but I'm going to minimize it because I won't need it maybe at all, but I don't know. All right, so what we're doing right here is we are telling Mongoose that we want to be able to connect to this Mongo database. It's on our machine, meaning it's on localhost, and it's called EMPS. Does that all make sense? We're going to move this in just a bit. We're going to move this out of here, and we're going to put it into our .env file. All right? And why? I mean, who cares? Well, later, what we hope to be able to do later is we hope, like I said, to be able to put this out on Heroku. Heroku has no concept of what localhost is. It's a cloud server that we can use for free to put our stuff out there. So for it to encounter localhost, it'll break right there because it doesn't know what localhost means. Now, I'm going to do a file save, and it's kind of important as you're going through this to make sure that at no time do we break our server. Does that make sense? All right. And if we do, I mean, I'll have to just go back. It used to be you had to put in a bunch of parser stuff in, when you did this, and now I don't think you have to anymore. But we're going to find out. So because we're going to try doing a couple things in here, just to show you. And again, you can look through the Mongoose documentation for what I'm about to tell you. All right, and if you want to try some of this stuff, you'll be able to try it. Or if you need a better explanation than the explanation I'm about to give you, you can go there and try to find it. All right, so we're going to come in and in here say const, not there, const db, that's our database, equals mongoose dot connection. And you'll see that we do have, if you look in here, we do have the IntelliSense. All right. And just like that. And now I want to be able to do a couple of things. First of all, if we run into an error, I want to know, I want to be told that we have an error. Okay? Now, what do I mean? Well, again, if you didn't have the Mongo shell running, you'd probably run into an error when you try doing this. Because literally it has nothing open for MongoDB that it can basically get information off of, send information to, etc. So we're going to come in here and we're going to say db.on, and we're going to put in here error. Get rid of that. Hold on a second. All right. So db.on error, and if we do run into some kind of an error, that's going to be the parameter, and we're going to run. Oh, why does that keep turning on? I try turning that off, and it always turns back on again. All right. So we're going to come in here, and we're going to run a fat arrow function. All right. And we're just going to say, I don't know, I'll tell you what, let's just console.log it. So console.log of the error. Now, I probably have mentioned this before. I may not have, I don't know. This name has to be that name. It's expecting error. This name is a parameter you're providing to this particular arrow function. If you want to just call it ERR, for example, you could do that. But it's expecting in here, this is on error. That's why that needs to be like that. But it by no means does it have to be the same name. All right, then I'm going to put another one of these statements here, but this is going to be a db.once. And I'm going to say, hey, if you're able to open the database, okay. All right, so we're about to try to open the database. And if you're able to open the database, I'm just going to do a console.log, and I'll just say connected to EMP's database. And again, what you say in there doesn't really matter. But again, I'm just going to keep harping on the same stuff, that has to be error, that has to be open. All right? So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go back into here and notice the message I got, connected to EMP's database. Now, I'm not going to try this, but my guess would be at least that if I didn't have my Mongo shell open and I tried that, I'd get the error message. Does that all make sense to everybody? All right. Okay. So I already mentioned this to you. What we're going to do is, in just a minute, is we're going to move this. We're going to move this. All right? And let's see. We're going to go into our .env file in just a second. So I'm going to grab every bit of this right there, and I'm just going to cut it. right there. So that mongoose.connect, which is on line 6 for me, I'm cutting that. And I'm going to find my .env file, and it doesn't look like I created one. So I'm going to come down here, and when you create it, so I'm going to do a new file, it is just a period, not the word dot, period, env, and hit enter. All right? Now we can call this anything we want to call it. All right? But I'm going to just call it what it is, which is my database URL. So I'm going to take my database URL and I'm going to set it equal to that. When you do that, you don't use any quotes. It's also recommended that you don't even put any blank spaces in there. So in my program, in just a moment, I'm going to put database URL in there. And what's going to happen is the system is going to say, oh, what you really mean is not database URL, you really mean MongoDB : / localhost emps. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So let's save this. We may not even need this file anymore for what we're working on, but make sure you've got all that in there, save it, and then you can close it. All right? We've already got our require.env.config, and that's recommended that if you're going to use that, you put it at the top of your program. All right? So then in our Mongo Connect, we're going to put in here process.env.database URL. And again, if you happen to call yours something different, you're going to have to change that. All right? I'm just assuming you're going to be using the same names that I'm going to be using. All right? Now, go ahead.
Are those backticks or just single
These are
quotes?
just single quotes.
Okay.
The only time we have to worry about using backticks is if we've got a variable that we want to interpolate. And
Okay.
we don't have any variable in there that we want to interpolate. All right, and I'm looking in here. Well, you'll notice, wow, it gave me a bunch of errors. See, that's not a good thing. All right, it says invalid connection string process.env database URL. I'm not sure what it doesn't like. Let's see if we can figure it out. I don't think it needs the quotes. That might be what the problem is. All right, so let me get rid of the quotes. Apologize. And let's see. Did it come back again? See, now it's up and running again. All right? So my error, okay, just process.env database URL. And again, nobody said anything yet, so I'm taking for granted, not going too fast, I'm taking for granted that what I'm saying makes sense. All right? Now, we're going to put in some code right here, and the order in which you put these lines of code doesn't exactly matter, except I'm going to do something right now where I'm going to add some middleware, and I'm going to tell it to use Express. So that line better come before the code I'm about to put in. Does that make sense? In fact, what a lot of people do is they take these two lines, and you can do this, I'll just do it right now. They take these lines, these constants, and they literally move, whoops, come on, try it again. They literally move, come on, move them so they're up near the top of the program. So they're up by the other constants that are here, like that. And there really doesn't have to be a blank space even here. All right? Just the advantage of doing that is that I know all my constants are up on top. You say, well, why didn't you do it here? Well, I had to do my Mongoose Connect first before I could actually create the Mongoose connection. All right? Okay. Again, I'm hoping everybody's with me, but now I want to come in and I want to add some middleware. All right? And again, if you really don't know what middleware is, the idea is it's intermediary code. So it's the code that allows you to communicate directly with Node as a way to look at it. All right? So we're going to come in here and we're going to say, add middleware. You don't have to put a comment in there, but you can. So I'm going to say app.use, and I'm going to say express.json, which is going to allow us to use JSON. All right? Now, I could go and I could show you a lot of videos right now. I could show you a lot of articles right now, etc. And we may or may not have, I don't know, talked about this already. We probably have, but just in case. We want to write this program and be able to utilize the model view controller pattern. So that's it right there. So this is from Mozilla's developer network page. So I'm going to keep this one up for just a moment. All right? So we're not going to have a view in here just because we're not going to worry. We're going to be using Postman or Thunder Client or something, all right, for what we work on for our GUI, for lack of better words. Our GUI won't really be a GUI. Does that make sense? But starting in this chapter, right now, in this app that we're going through, we're going to have a model and we're going to have a controller. All right? The model, as it says, defines the data structure. Typically, it's the code that's going to directly interact with the database. In our case, in just a minute, we're going to make, we'll just call it like an EMP schema. All right? Okay? And maybe we'll just call it employee. It doesn't really matter. So what's going to happen is eventually we're going to put in a URL. So we'll put in something that'll look something like this in just a bit. So we'll put in http://localhost/ or colon, what did you say it was, 5678, whatever, it doesn't matter, / and then we'll put in something like employees. And as soon as we put that in, all right, as soon as we put that in, and we'll have it in Thunder Client, and here I can even make it bigger so you can see it. So when we put that in, all right, something like that, what should happen is all of the employees that we have should show on the screen. If it's a brand new database and there aren't any employees yet, it's going to look like that because it's an array of, an empty array. All right, but this is what we're going to put in for, we'll call it get all. All right, so that'll allow us to get all employees. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, then we're going to have something, let me make this for just a second, we'll make it nice and big. Then we're going to have another one that's just going to be designed to get one employee. All right, so it'll be this, but then it'll have after it some kind of an ID. And it doesn't matter, again, what that is. Okay? Once we put it in a record, that record will have an ID, and then we can go search for that. Does that make sense? We're not going to worry right now. We could go in and actually create that EMPS database inside of Mongo Shell. We could add records in there, etc. We're not even going to do that. We're going to let our program add all of our records, modify all of our records, delete all of our records, show us all of our records. So that's what we're going to do. All right. So then after we do that, well, the next thing would, that would make some sense at least would be create new employee. All right. So the key thing about creating a new, in fact, I'll put it like this. I'm going to say post create because it's going to be a post that we're going to put in there. Other than that, it's going to look just like this. So it'll look like that. So the only thing that's going to distinguish these two from one another are the action, whether it's a get or whether it's a post. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. Then we're going to come in, and what we've done in the past, maybe not with a lot of success, but we've come in here and we've used what's called a put. Now don't type that in because I'm going to change it in a second. All right? When you put in a put, again, it expects there to be an ID in here. All right? But we're going to have about 4 fields in the table that we're going to create in just a minute. All right? And we'll have like one field that'll be called name. I don't care about first name and last name. I'm just going to call it name. Okay? This is going to be our employees. And I don't want you to have to do tons of typing. That's why we're going to do it like that. We'll have a name. We'll have a department. That'll be the department that you work for. All right. We'll have a salary, and we'll have a date hired. 4 fields. All right. And the problem is sometimes your tables have got a boatload of fields in them. I mean, they may have 10, 15, or more fields. If you do a put, what the system expects to happen is it expects you to fill in a value for all 15 of those fields, even if you're only changing one field. Does that make sense? Because that's how the put operation works. So instead of put, we're going to use patch. Because what patch does is patch basically says, oh, I'm only going to put in what's actually changing. All right? Which to me at least makes a lot more sense. And then finally, to finish up, so we've got the C, create, and that's right here. We've got the R for read, which is right there, either all or some. We've got the U for update, and now we need the delete. And again, as we do this, it'll be set up the same way. So I want you to realize these are what are referred to as the 5 different end points for our program. All right? So what we could do right now, what we could do if we wanted to, and I'm not going to do this, but we could come back in here and put in app.get, app.get, app.post, app.patch, app.delete, and put them right in here. We could do that. There's not a problem with doing that. Except imagine we only have one table, but let's say we had 5 different tables. All right? So now rather than having 5 of these things in here, we'd have 25. All right? And what happens a lot of times is databases do grow exponentially, a lot more than people think they're going to grow. All right? So what we're going to do, we can do this right now. I had you come in here and make this controllers folder before. If you didn't do that, make sure you go and do that right now. All right? And inside of that controllers folder, I'm going to make a new file. And I'm going to call it emp controller.js. It'll be the controller for the employee. Again, we could call it employee if that makes it easier for you to understand. It really doesn't matter. So if that's better, then call it employee. Whoops, except I can't spell. Call it employee controller.js. That's totally fine. So that's fine. I'll leave it like that. All right. We're going to put some stuff in there in just a moment. Now, you don't have to type this in yet. You'll have plenty of time. But the last thing that we're going to type in is a line that'll say something like module.exports equal, and then we'll give it some value. All right? And what that will do is we are then going to have to put a require statement inside of our server.js file, which says that's opening up the communication mechanism between our controller, all right, and this controller right here and the actual file that we're using to run the program. And then in just a bit after the break, we're going to do the same kind of thing, but we're going to create a model. All right? So, I mean, again, that's why I wanted to show you this, and I wanted you to understand. Notice there is no direct communication ever between the view. All right, this actually, I don't like the way they wrote this. I probably shouldn't have grabbed this one, but where they have this right here, pretend that isn't there. Because technically the model and the view never talk to one another. All right, rather, we've got this arrow should go in both directions. So the controller calls the correct model, it does its thing, it sends information back to the controller, it does its thing, it sends information to the view, and the view sends it out to the user. Does that make sense? I guess I didn't even realize that one was in here. If I did, I probably wouldn't have even picked this one. But again, what we're concerned with in this example that we're going through right now, out of the MVC architecture, is the M and the C. believe me, we're going to start very soon, either tomorrow or Thursday, we're going to start building a full-fledged project that's going to have everything. It's going to have the model, it's going to have the view, it's going to have the controller. It's going to have it all. All right? And rather than you having to worry about creating the view and doing this and doing that, etc., we're going to go out and grab a free template that's out there, because it'll just make it easier for us. I'm not that concerned with the view anymore, because that was AWD 1000. That was what we learned in there, was how to create views, for lack of better words. All right, now we're working with models and we're working with controllers. All right, so jumping back in then, and where do I have that? Okay. I'd like you to go back into, because we're going to take a break in just a moment, but before we do, go back into your server.js file. This one we'll just leave blank. We're going to fill that in after the break, so don't worry about it. If you get an error, which we might have gotten now, we didn't, but if we tried to run something now, we get an error because we got this line laying out in the middle of nowhere. You can always just comment that line out. It doesn't hurt anything. I'll uncomment it in a moment. But what I want to start to do here is start to open up the means of communications. So, all right, what we want to do, this controller that's in here is really, it's a router. All right, for lack of better words, it really and truly is a router. All right, so we're going to come in here and we're going to say const employee router equals require. Now we have to tell it where this thing lives. We have to come over to here. Look on the screen if you would, please. We are right here. So we're right under this. We want to go underneath controllers. So we have to give it the right path. So we come in here and we say /, and notice one of the things that it finds is controllers. So I'll just choose the IntelliSense and a / again, and now there's employee controller. All right? So what that is basically done, after we export that after the break, is now there is a communication mechanism that's opened up between these two files. All right? That's all okay, except the system has to know that when we use this, what the heck do we want to do? All right, well, what I mean is this. We have to put in some more middleware. So app.use, and we're going to say in here, anytime we go to /employees, all right, anytime we go to /employees, what we want is we want you to use the employee router. We're only going to have one single table in here, all right? And what I'm going to do, and at least tomorrow, I guess, probably will be lab, and we'll see how it goes. But what I would like you guys to do is see if we can go and convert the program we did before in MySQL, have you convert it over to this. I've already changed the database around for you, and I'm going to give you that information. But I'd like you to go in and try to add so you'll have 3 controllers. You'll have a titles controller, you'll have an authors controller, and you'll have a publishers controller. We're going to create the schema after the break, and with that schema, the good news is we're going to do the hard one, all right, or I'll show you how to do the hard one, and the other ones are simple. The publishers have got 1 field in it, publisher name. The author's got 2 fields in it, first name and last name. The hard one, so to speak, is titles. It's got 5 fields in it. We're not worried about the, I cut some of the stuff off of here. So all I put in there was an ISBN, a title, an edition number, a copyright, and a price. Just those 5 fields. All right. So I'll tell you what, let's take a break right here, and when we come back, so do a file save. You got this, if the save all is unhighlighted, or, you know, where you can do that, you know, now I've saved everything. After the break, we're gonna go back in and we're gonna write this. All right, so let's take a break. It's 1:02, let's come back please at 1:15.